think I didn't do anything wrong, just followed my heart, even if that meant meeting someone else for a while. When the legal documents arrived at my door, I was honestly shocked. How could he turn my own story against me, after all I'd been through? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The apartment felt smaller these days, though nothing had physically changed. Alinora Vexley sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while 7-year-old Maya played quietly in the corner. Too quietly, if she was being honest, but Maya had always been a sensitive child. Julian would be home soon from his digital marketing job, probably with that same tired expression he'd been wearing for months. Her phone buzzed. A text from Darren Quill, her university ex, who'd recently moved back to the city. "Coffee tomorrow? I could use a friendly face." She smiled despite herself. At least someone appreciated her company. "Mum, when's Dad coming home?" Maya's voice was small, uncertain. "Soon, sweetheart. He's just busy with work." The lie came easily. Julian wasn't busy. He was distant, cold, checking out of their marriage bit by bit. At 32, Alinora felt invisible in her own home, processing insurance claims by day and coming home to a husband who barely looked up from his laptop. The front door clicked open. Julian entered, his tall frame filling the doorway, but his presence somehow diminished. He kissed Maya's forehead, then glanced at Alinora with those questioning eyes she'd grown to resent. "How was your day?" he asked, the same question he always asked. "Fine, long." She didn't look up from her phone. "I might grab drinks with some college friends tomorrow night. Catch up, you know." Julian paused in hanging up his coat. "College friends? Anyone I know?" The suspicion in his voice irritated her. "Just some people from my old program. You probably wouldn't remember them." She deleted Darren's text thread, a habit she'd developed over the past few weeks. "Why, is that a problem?" "No, of course not. You've been out a lot lately." "I've been out some. God, Julian, I'm allowed to have a social life." She stood, gathering her things with sharp movements. "Maybe if you showed any interest in doing things together, I wouldn't need to find company elsewhere." Maya looked between them, her small face creased with worry. Julian noticed immediately, softening his voice. "You're right. I'm sorry. Have fun tomorrow." But as Alinora headed to the bedroom, she caught him watching her reflection in the hallway mirror, his expression unreadable. The downtown bistro hummed with afternoon energy as Alinora slid into the booth across from Darren. At 33, he'd aged well, still charming, still easy to talk to, still looking at her like she mattered. "You look amazing, Ali," he said, using the nickname that brought back memories of simpler times. "Marriage suits you." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "Does it? Because most days I feel like I'm disappearing." "What do you mean?" The words poured out, Julian's distance, the routine that felt like a trap, the way he looked through her instead of at her. Darren listened with the kind of attention she'd forgotten existed, leaning forward, asking questions, making her feel heard. "You deserve better than that," he said finally. "You always were too good for guys who didn't appreciate you." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. They talked for hours, and when they finally left the bistro, the sun was setting. On the sidewalk, Darren turned to her with that old familiar smile. "This was nice. I forgot how easy it is to talk to you." "Me too." She was standing closer than she should, looking up into his eyes like she used to 15 years ago. When he kissed her, soft and tentative, she didn't pull away. Across the street, evening traffic moved past in a blur of headlights, and for a moment, she felt alive again. Later that evening, she posted a carefully cropped photo from earlier. Her and some girlfriends at another cafe, Julian edited out of the frame entirely. The comments rolled in. "Girls' night. You look so happy." "Where's Julian hiding?" Living your best life, she responded to each one, painting herself as the fun, social wife whose husband was always too busy with work to join. It felt good to control the narrative, to be seen as the victim of Julian's neglect rather than whatever this was. When she finally got home at nearly midnight, she found wilted flowers on the kitchen counter, daisies, her favourites, and a note. Thought these might brighten your day. J. Julian was already in bed, pretending to sleep. She threw the note away and left the flowers to die. The family picnic in City Park should have been pleasant. Evelyn Morland, Julian's 62-year-old mother, had organised it as she did every spring, complete with her famous potato salad and stern expectations of family harmony. Alinora's father Simon was there too, along with her sister Jessa, trying to keep things light. What made it complicated was Darren's presence. Alinora had invited him casually, mentioning he was new in town and could use some friends. The more the merrier, she'd said, ignoring Julian's tight smile. Now, watching Darren charm everyone with stories from his job in tech consulting, she felt vindicated. See? She had good judgment. She chose interesting people. Darren's been such a lifesaver, she announced to the group, her hand briefly touching his arm. It's so nice to have someone who actually listens when you talk. The comment hung in the air. Julian, sitting on the picnic blanket with Maya, went very still. What does that mean? Evelyn asked, her voice sharp. Oh, nothing dramatic, Alinora laughed. Just that some people are naturally better conversationalists. More present, you know? Simon nodded supportively. Alinora's always been social. She needs intellectual stimulation. She's married, Evelyn said flatly. Her intellectual stimulation should come from her husband. Mom, Julian said quietly, but Alinora was already bristling. That's incredibly old-fashioned, Evelyn. Marriage doesn't mean isolation. Julian's been so wrapped up in work lately, I barely see him. Thank God for friends like Darren who actually want to spend time together. The group fell silent. Maya pressed closer to Julian's side, sensing the tension. Jessa looked uncomfortable, while Darren seemed to realize he'd walked into a minefield. Maybe I should, he started. No, stay, Alinora said firmly. You're the only one here who doesn't think wives should be seen and not heard. Evelyn stood abruptly. Julian, I'm leaving. Call me later. She gathered her things with sharp, angry movements. Maya, sweetheart, you know Grandma loves you, right? After she left, the picnic limped along awkwardly. But when Jessa's friend started taking group photos, Alinora made sure she was positioned between Darren and her father, Julian relegated to the edge with Maya. Later that evening, the photos appeared on social media with tags like family fun and comments calling Darren the life of the party and such a catch. One friend even wrote, Darren, Julian, any day. Julian screenshotted every single comment. We need to talk. Julian's voice was calm, but Alinora recognized the tone. It was the same one he used with difficult clients. Professional, measured, final. She looked up from her laptop, where she'd been messaging Darren about meeting for lunch tomorrow. About what? He sat across from her at the kitchen table, a manila folder in his hands. Maya was at her friend's house, the apartment unusually quiet. About the lies. Her heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. What lies? You said you were working late on Tuesday. Your office confirmed you left at 5:30. His voice remained steady. You said you were at book club on Thursday. The book club hasn't met in 2 months. I don't know what you're trying to prove here, Julian, but you've been with him. It wasn't a question. Darren, for weeks. The accusation hung between them. Alinora felt cornered, which always made her fight harder. That's ridiculous. We're friends. I'm allowed to have friends. Friends don't delete text conversations. Friends don't lie about where they've been. He opened the folder, revealing printed screenshots. Friends don't kiss on street corners. Her blood went cold. Someone had seen them. Someone had told Julian. But instead of admitting anything, she went on the attack. So you're having me followed now? You're tracking my phone, investigating me like some kind of criminal? She stood, pacing. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Julian. This controlling, paranoid behavior. No wonder I need to find companionship elsewhere. Companionship, he repeated flatly. Yes, companionship, emotional support. Someone who actually cares about my day, my thoughts, my feelings. When's the last time you asked me about anything that mattered? When's the last time you looked at me like you were happy to see me? She was building steam now, righteous in her anger. I've been lonely in this marriage for months, Julian. Months. And instead of asking why, instead of trying to fix things, you hire private investigators. I didn't hire anyone. Your sister took those photos. The words hit like a slap. Jessa had been there that day, across the street, running errands. Jessa had seen the kiss and told Julian. She had no right. She had every right. She's worried about Maya, about what this is doing to our daughter. Julian's composure cracked slightly. Do you know Maya asked me if Daddy and Mommy were getting divorced? She's 7 years old, Ali. 7. The use of her nickname, Darren's nickname, felt like a weapon. Don't blame Maya's anxiety on me. If she's upset, it's because you've been walking around here like a ghost for months. I'm not the one who checked out of this marriage first, so this is my fault. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying marriages take work, and when one person stops trying... I brought you flowers last week. The quiet statement stopped her mid-sentence. I brought you flowers, your favorites, and you threw them away. I've asked you to dinner dozens of times this year. You always have other plans. I suggested couples therapy in February. You said we didn't need it. His voice was getting quieter, more controlled. I've been trying, Ali. You just haven't been here to notice. She wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she deflected. It's too little, too late. You can't ignore someone for months and then expect flowers to fix everything. Julian nodded slowly, like he'd expected this response. You're right. It is too late. He stood, leaving the folder on the table. I'm staying at my mom's tonight. We'll figure out the custody schedule later. Custody schedule? The words didn't make sense. Julian, what are you talking about? But he was already walking away, car keys in hand. Julian. The front door closed with a soft click, leaving her alone with the evidence of her lies spread across the kitchen table. The law office smelled like leather and disappointment. Alinora sat across from Julian and his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who'd laid out the evidence with clinical precision. Text messages between Alinora and Darren, some explicitly romantic. Bank statements showing expensive dinners and gifts charged to their joint account. Social media posts painting Julian as neglectful while elevating Darren. Witness statements from family members about the public humiliation at the picnic. This is harassment, Alinora said, her voice shaking. You're trying to destroy me. I'm trying to protect my daughter, Julian replied, and myself. Patricia Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Morland, your husband is seeking a divorce on grounds of adultery. The evidence is quite comprehensive. It wasn't adultery. We kissed a few times. That's not... The emotional affair began months ago, Patricia continued. The financial records show gifts purchased for Mr. Quill using marital funds. The public humiliation component adds additional grounds for emotional distress. Alinora looked at Julian, really looked at him, for the first time in months. He appeared older, worn down, but also somehow stronger. Resolved. Julian, please. We can work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. Maya needs both her parents. Maya needs stability, he said quietly. She needs to see what healthy relationships look like. She needs to know that actions have consequences. I made mistakes, but you pushed me to this. You were never there, never present. I was working to support our family. I was trying to build something stable for Maya's future. His voice remained level. But even if I had been the worst husband in the world, it wouldn't justify what you did. How you did it. Patricia placed a document in front of Alinora. These are the divorce papers. Your husband is requesting joint custody with primary residence, division of assets, and spousal support calculations based on both parties' current income. The words swam on the page. Joint custody. Division of assets. This was really happening. I need time to think. You have 30 days to respond, Patricia said. I'd recommend getting your own attorney. Outside the law office, Alinora called her father. Daddy, I need help. Julian's trying to take Maya away from me. Simon's voice was tired. Honey, I saw the photos. I heard what happened at the picnic. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm supposed to want what's best for my granddaughter, and right now I'm not sure what that is. The line went quiet. Daddy? Get a lawyer, Alinora, and maybe think about what you really want here, because if you want your family back, this isn't the way. The courtroom was smaller than Alinora had expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic setting she'd seen on TV. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 50s with kind but tired eyes, reviewed the case files while Alinora sat with her hastily hired attorney. Julian sat across the aisle with Patricia Chen, looking calm. Behind him, Evelyn offered silent support. Behind Alinora, the seats were mostly empty. Simon had come, but Jessa had declined, saying she needed space to process everything. This is a no-fault divorce proceeding, Judge Morrison began, but the circumstances of the marriage breakdown are relevant to custody and asset division. Alinora's attorney had advised her to take responsibility, show remorse, focus on Maya's needs. But sitting there, listening to Patricia Chen outline the timeline of deception, she felt attacked. When given the chance to speak, she stood carefully. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I won't deny that. But I was driven to them by months of emotional neglect. My husband worked constantly, showed no interest in our relationship, made me feel invisible in my own home. Her voice grew stronger. I sought companionship elsewhere because I was starving for human connection. Yes, it went too far, but the marriage was already broken. Judge Morrison nodded neutrally. Mr. Morland, would you like to respond? Julian stood slowly. Your Honor, I accept responsibility for any ways I failed as a husband. Work stress, communication problems, those are real issues in marriages, but they don't justify deception, public humiliation, or using marital funds to finance an affair. He paused. My primary concern is Maya. She's been affected by the instability, the arguments, the tension. She needs consistency and honesty. She needs to see that actions have consequences, but also that people can rebuild their lives with dignity. The judge reviewed the custody evaluation, which recommended joint custody with counseling for Maya to help her process the family changes. The financial division was straightforward, assets split, modest spousal support for 2 years, while Alinora established independence. The court finds that both parties contributed to the marriage breakdown, but the deceptive nature of Mrs. Morland's conduct and its impact on the family unit are significant factors, Judge Morrison concluded. Joint custody is awarded with a structured schedule. Both parents will attend co-parenting classes. As they filed out, Alinora felt numb. In the hallway, Julian paused. For what it's worth, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to stop being hurt. She wanted to argue, to blame him one more time, but the fight had gone out of her. I know. Maya loves you. This doesn't change that. I know that too. He walked away with his mother, leaving Alinora standing in the courthouse hallway with legal papers that made everything official. Her marriage was over. Her family was divided. Her reputation was in ruins. But for the first time in months, she wasn't pretending anymore. 6 months later, Alinora sat in her small one-bedroom apartment, Maya's drawings covering the refrigerator. Her daughter was with Julian this weekend, their custody schedule now a routine they'd all adapted to. The divorce had been finalized. The social media posts had been deleted. Darren had moved to another city for work, their relationship revealed as the shallow thing it had always been when stripped of its forbidden appeal. She'd started therapy, partly because the court recommended it, partly because she was tired of being angry all the time. Dr. Williams was helping her understand the difference between reasons and excuses, between feeling neglected and choosing deception. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessa. "Maya's recital is Thursday. Are you going?" "Of course," she typed back. "Wouldn't miss it. Julian will be there." "I know. We're working on being better co-parents." It was true. The anger between them had faded into something more manageable. Disappointment, regret, but also a shared commitment to Maya's well-being. They sat together at school events now, polite and focused on their daughter. Alinora had learned that Julian brought flowers that night because he'd planned to suggest a weekend getaway. Just the two of them. He'd made reservations at a bed and breakfast, arranged for his mother to watch Maya. The reservation confirmation was still in his email drafts, never sent. She'd learned this not from Julian, but from Maya, who'd overheard Grandma Evelyn talking about it months later. The knowledge sat heavy in her chest, not because it changed anything, but because it reminded her that her version of events had never been the complete story. Looking back, she could see the moments when different choices might have led somewhere else. The first time Darren texted, she could have mentioned it to Julian. When she felt lonely, she could have spoken up instead of seeking attention elsewhere. When Julian brought flowers, she could have seen them as an attempt to connect, rather than too little, too late. But she'd been so convinced of her own righteousness, so sure that Julian's distance justified her deception, that she'd missed every opportunity to actually fix what was broken. The legal papers sat in a folder on her desk, final and irreversible. She'd fought them at first, convinced Julian was being vindictive. Now she understood they weren't punishment. They were boundaries, documentation, a way of saying that actions had consequences, but also that people could start over with clarity about what had happened and why. Maya was thriving in the new arrangement, seeing both parents regularly, attending counseling to process the changes. She was laughing more, asking fewer worried questions about why Mommy and Daddy seemed sad all the time. Sometimes Alinora wondered what would have happened if she'd been honest from the beginning, about feeling lonely, about Darren's return to her life, about needing more connection in her marriage. Would Julian have listened? Would they have found a way back to each other? She'd never know, but she was learning to live with uncertainty, to focus on what she could control going forward, rather than relitigating the past. The flowers Julian had brought that night were daisies, her favourites. She'd never told him she loved daisies. He'd simply noticed, over years of marriage, and remembered. She kept a small bouquet of them on her kitchen table now, a reminder that love wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, waiting with flowers, while the person you cared about made choices that would change everything. The legal documents had been shocking when they arrived, but they weren't revenge. They were Julian's way of saying that he deserved better than deception, that Maya deserved better than a home built on lies, and that sometimes love meant letting go with dignity rather than holding on with desperation. Alinora was learning to live with the consequences of her choices, but she was also learning that consequences weren't the end of the story. They were just the beginning of whatever came next. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.